banks and other institutions frown upon special assessments. That is an indication that your reserve study is not either funded or accurate. So we've had discussions from other, unit owners that, hey, can't we just wait for special, assessments and drop our HOA fees? So if we want to sell the unit, it isn't, the HOA is not prohibitively high. And we're pretty passionate with, no, special assessments are a bad thing when somebody's trying to get a loan to purchase a place.
HOA Insights, common sense for common areas, exists to help all 2 million volunteer board members nationwide have the right information at the right time to make the right decisions for their future. This podcast is sponsored by 4 companies that care about board members: Association Insights and Marketplace, Association Reserves, Community Financials, and Kevin Davis Insurance Services. You'll find links to their websites and social media in the show notes.
Thankless job. What comes to your mind when you hear those 2 words? Having served on the board of my condominium association for several years, followed by decades of experience in this industry, there's one job that, without a doubt, deserves to be at the top of the list: an elected volunteer HOA board member. So a regular feature of our weekly podcast is 1 episode a month devoted to sharing the stories of real-life unsung board heroes. In our eyes, a board hero is one of the 2 million elected volunteers who are worthy of recognition for simply performing a thankless job well. Well, if you match our definition of a board hero or know someone who does, please reach out to us. Our contact details are provided in the show notes. So welcome back to HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. I'm Robert Nordlund, and I'm here to share the story of an unsung board hero named Brooks Cummings. This is episode number 43. And if you missed meeting our other board heroes, you can find them easily on our website, hoainsights.org, or by subscribing to HOA Insights on your favorite podcast platform. Now I've got some fun news to share. Our upcoming episode number 47 will be presented as a live stream on April 1, no fooling, at 3 p.m. Pacific Time. It'll also be available on the normal ways as a recording on the hoainsights.org, on your favorite podcast platform, or on our YouTube channel. But we thought we'd mix in something new and different in case you wanted to catch us live and ask questions live. In that episode, I'll be addressing the topic of reserve study legislation. Is your state next? I'll describe where it started, 3 different purposes, trends, and why this matters nowadays. So mark your calendars for April 1, 3 p.m. Pacific, if you want to catch an episode live and ask questions live. More details on that to come. But back to today in episode number 43. Before you hear Brooks' story, however, let me introduce you to one of our sponsors.
Are you part of a homeowners association or condominium board? Making the right financial decisions for your community's future is crucial. At Association Reserves, we're proud to serve communities nationwide, specializing in reserve studies tailored to your community's unique needs. Our expert team helps you accurately assess your property's assets, forecast future expenses, and develop a solid funding plan. Whether you're a small HOA or a large condominium association, we've got you covered. Visit reservestudy.com to learn more and get a proposal for your association.
Hello, my name is Brooks Cummings, and I've served as a volunteer on the board of Westlake Residential Condominium Association for 4 years. When I'm not wearing my board member hat, I'm a retired engineering manager, volunteer frequently within the community, and I'm very interested in community events.
Westlake Residential Condominiums is a 31-unit apartment-style condominium community in Burlington, Vermont. The building is 18 years old and 100% owner-occupied. And as you just heard, Brooks has lived there and served on the board of directors for 4 years. So we asked what position he holds, as well as what first motivated him to get involved with the association and its governance.
The office I hold is one of infrastructure. Initially, when I joined the board, it was a much smaller board, and the president was, I'll use the word, burdened with many different hats and responsibilities. So we decided to divide it into unique responsibilities, infrastructure being one of them, and that's the position I hold. I was first involved as a board member, or was asked to be elected as a board member, because I had an interest in how the condominium was operated both financially and physically. I come from a small town in Vermont, and this is my first experience living in a condominium. It's one of the premier places in Burlington to live, and it has quite high homeowners association fees. So part of my drive to become a board member was to understand the rigor around expenses, what the fees were associated with, and have kind of a working knowledge of, the inner workings of the building.
We never heard of a board member serving as an infrastructure officer, but considered it a good sign that the association was concerned enough about infrastructure to devote a board member seat to it. We asked Brooks what infrastructure meant to him.
My definition of infrastructure is very wide-ranging. I was able to get RFQs, procure, and have installed weather matting, outside balconies to make sure that folks weren't slipping, to working with electrical companies on fire panel replacement. Not that I do the replacement, but scheduling, making sure that they have access to the panel, reviewing RFQs for various panel companies, talking with the suppliers to make sure I understand the functional aspects of the panel. Recently, I worked with a lighting company to improve lighting within our garage. With the increase in, I would say, theft rate that we're seeing, I don't think it's just a Burlington thing. It was important to the owners to have adequate lighting to make sure that they were in a safe spot. And it also reaches out to, we have facades on the building. Our building was built in, I believe, 2006 to 8, and they're starting to age. So getting with people on membranes that are starting to deteriorate or facades that are starting to pull away. Again, not doing the actual work myself, but working with the property management company to kind of vet the vendors and be able to articulate to the rest of the board my recommendations.
Brooks indicated in his previous answer that the size of the board grew so that one single board member wouldn't be wearing too many hats. And that made us wonder how easy it is to be elected to the board. Here's what Brooks had to say.
I think it's easy to the degree that we started, when I started here, we had few board members. I don't remember exactly. I'm going to say 4 or 5. As people took interest, we got up to 8. At the end of the last 3 years of those people that, the end of the 3 years they were responsible for, we had a couple because of family illness and, wanted to follow other adventures in life that opted off the board. We decided that probably 6 members was good. I would say it was a learning curve. When you have 31 units condominium, if you have 8 board members, there's a lot of energy that is brought to not only the board meeting, but to the property management company on projects, improvements, repairs that require the property management to collect RFQs. Vendors need vetting. I truly believe you can have too many board members because at some point, if you have the right amount, then the level of work that is generated seems appropriate. The urgent things are addressed. The less urgent things are in queue. And I think we got to a point where we're almost overwhelming the property management company. And we got input from them that because we were asking so many vendors for RFQs, they were having difficulty getting them because Burlington is a very small, relatively small city. And if you ask for repeated requests, the vendors realize that it may be a waste of their time. And with the way the world is right now, especially here with the difficulty of getting employees, you can see the vendors are kind of hunkering down on the associations that they have deep relationships with and a history and a high success rate of turning RFQs into actual work.
As you just heard from Brooks, Westlake Residential Condominium Association has 6 seats on its board, and each seat serves terms of 3 years. We asked Brooks when his latest term would be ending and if he intended to continue serving on the board.
My service on the board will be at the end of 6 years. So I have to do the math, but I think I've got another 2 years of service on the board. But my intent is to continue because I enjoy the relationship with the board and with the community. As I said, I'm retired and I'm one of, I would say half or 3/4 of the unit owners that are full-time members. Many are multiple property owners and seasonal occupants. And I enjoy the relationship. It's not burdensome by any means, but I enjoy the relationship with the vendors. My technical background really helps me understand a lot of the aspects of what's going on, whether it's repairs, upgrades, etc. And that helps me really be articulate with the rest of the board and my neighbors on what exactly is going on. Issues can be very complex, whether it's electrical panels or plumbing or generators, et cetera, et cetera. And I think my past experience brings a good perspective and ability to communicate the issues with clarity.
Throughout this interview, Brooks cited his technical background as a valuable asset in his service to the board of directors. We asked him what other gifts and personal qualities have helped him in his job as a board member.
I would describe my special personality traits, I won't call them gifts, but attributes of my personality that I think work well. I guess I'd say I'm non-combative, right? So I'm very collaborative. I like to listen to all sides of an argument or position or whatever the case may be. I like to grow deep relationships with my neighbors. So, I think they feel very comfortable coming to me with issues about the building, about concerns of the HOA funds. And from a technical background, I think I described it earlier. I think I bring a valued view of technical issues that are going on with the building, make myself very aware of things like reserve studies and what that entails, and making sure that we're funded appropriately, working through issues that need to be repaired, whether it comes from a maintenance expense account or an actual reserve study account. But personality-wise, I tend to be, as I said, very collaborative, try to not be overly emotional, and try to focus on the fact that this is our home and not, a corporation. So that's a whole different, brings up, after being in a publicly held corporation, it brings a whole different aspect of how you manage your vendors and the, tenacity in which you go after them for cost cutting, for example. In a business, that's something that's paramount, is reducing costs for your clients and stakeholders. Here, I lean towards, do we have partners that are reliable, that are collaborative, that we can count on to do the work and do the work well? And whether they're the lowest cost option is interesting, but in many cases not important.
Brooks seemed very motivated to maintain and cultivate relationships with not only his fellow board members, but also with the vendors that the association works with as well. We asked him how many hours per week he invests in his duties as a board member.
It comes and goes, but it's really, single-digit hours. Our property management company does a wonderful job of, as you would expect, managing financial reports, agendas, getting RFQs from various vendors. So most of my time is vetting the particular vendors and coming forward with recommendations on which to choose. I am the primary contact for vendors when they're on site, and also primary contact for the property management company that have urgent or not urgent needs to check out subsystems to make sure they're operating properly. I think it really saves them a lot of time on coming over and doing it versus they could just give me a quick call. I can run down to the electrical room and get a reading on a panel, et cetera, et cetera. I think the reason I'm speaking is because the property management company finds that of great value to somebody that they can leverage within the building, and sometimes to address, urgent issues like leaks, et cetera, et cetera. So
Brooks appeared to not only enjoy his duties as an association board member, but to genuinely thrive in the position as well. We asked him what some of his favorite and least favorite aspects of the job were.
My favorite aspect, I got to be honest with you, is the monthly meetings are very fun to be with. The rest of the board members have been with the board for, most of them for many, many years. We work really well together, and we have a personal relationship outside of the board. They tend to be positive. We have had some tough subjects, but it's always a pleasure to work with them because everybody is very thoughtful, very professional, and works very well together. So that makes the whole dealing with issues that come up in the building with the rest of the board members very pleasant. At this point, they're in real life unless one of the board members is away on business or vacation. And that's part of the pleasure of having the board meetings. We meet in one of the units that is in the penthouse. It's got a beautiful view. It's laid out like a conference room. We have coffee and snacks. The board meetings last 2 hours. And of course, we follow, strict rules that are managed by the person that takes meeting minutes. Probably the least favorite is there have been certain instances where unit owners have done things that are against policy, and having to, I use the word confront, but really having to have an adult conversation with an individual unit owner on their, what they did, how they did it, how they acted, and trying to root that discussion in our policies and procedures that we have documented. But that's always an uncomfortable conversation when you're talking with somebody that's in their home and how they're acting.
I can't say that I know many board members that truly enjoy monthly board meetings, but Brooks did paint a pretty appealing picture. On the other hand, having difficult conversations with fellow homeowners is a challenging situation that I think we can all relate to. We asked Brooks to speak more on that aspect.
So what's going on in the world right now, there's a lot of passion and a lot of horrific things that are going on in the world that people are doing to each other. I'll leave it at that, and I won't go into details. Recently, we had somebody that was very impassioned about how the mistreating of individuals in the world was being handled, and posted things that were they were I want to say accurate and maybe truthful, but can be very divisive, right? There are certain people that want to pick one side of the world issue and people that want to pick the other side. So the reason that was difficult is I needed to work with the president on going through our documentation on public postings, and then remove the public postings and start to answer, because it wasn't obvious to me which particular unit owner was doing the postings. At that point, I would have, personally addressed my concerns with the postings, but it was not in my purview on who was doing it. So we have two lobbies. One has a whiteboard where, it's, you can post like, hey, we're doing a progressive dinner, or hey, does anybody have a parking spot I can borrow? And then we have a lobby that exits out the back of the building that has windows on it. So the posting started in the main lobby on these windows. So I removed them several times, and then the posting moved to the second lobby onto the whiteboard, which I was removing. It was upsetting to one or more of the owners because, I go out in the morning, they were posting, and their perception was the postings were being immediately removed. And I removed them when I saw them. So it was a bit of thin ice. I worked very carefully with the president. We went back through the covenants, articulated the requirement, or if you're going to post, it can't be controversial. It can't be like politically based or religiously based, or, trying to make sure that feelings are not hurt and offense is not made. At some point, it became known to me who the person was. We had, a chat, and I think I was successful in relieving their concern about I was not on one side or the other. I think I don't have a dog in this hunt, realizing that people do horrible things to each other all over the world. But please understand that this may be an offense to one of your neighbors, although, I'm sure you're passionate and I appreciate your passion, but we just need to make sure things are appropriate. So that was probably my most uncomfortable situation yet as a board member.
Brooks spoke frequently about the collaborative nature of Westlake Residential's board of directors. We asked what he thought about the demographics and the overall culture of the board.
So the board, this building's residents and the board are built up. The demographic tends to be on the older side. The demographic tends to be leaders in industry. So folks that have owned their own businesses, or folks that have had relatively high responsibilities within other businesses. I find them to be very professional, act with a high sense of integrity, are not volatile, are very respectful, and are great listeners. And I'm just about 100% that every board member would agree with me on those attributes. In the past, what I've heard are there have been contentious members and there have been difficult relationships, but the folks that are on the board right now work wonderfully together. And as I said, part of it is we have a relationship outside of the board, right? We're all community members. We frequently have dinners with each other or go to movies together or play mahjong or whatever the case may be, right? It's that type of demographic that has the time and the desire to build deep community relations within the building.
As we learned from Roger Mitch, our last board hero featured in episode 39, living in cold parts of the country with lots of precipitation can dramatically accelerate deterioration to the property. We asked Brooks if the current board is focused on any particular project, and here's what Brooks had to say.
Right now, we have our particular focus is on, we have some what I'll call infrastructure things. So stuff external to the building that are starting to deteriorate. Through COVID, we've been trying to address several of these big animal things for like a year and a half. And just trying to get vendors to come in, give us engineering reports, reach out to the folks that could do the work, get the statement of work together and actually execute the work has just been horrific. I got to be honest with you. I'm told, and I believe that a lot of other associations are meeting with the same things. For example, folks will get halfway through a project, and the vendor will say, oh, guess what? The one expert that was doing this particular coding quit, and I no longer have anybody that can do that. Therefore, I'm backing out of the contract. I'm hoping it's not specifically Burlington, but COVID has brought a lack of employee engagement or employee availability that is really impacting the vendor's ability to service the requirement of the community. And I kind of get back to, I'm focusing on deep relationships. For example, the electrical company that came in, did the lights, was prompt with response, let me know they were going to be an hour late in coming to the building. Super professional when they were here, did an excellent job to the degree now that whenever an individual unit owner has some electrical work, whether it be a charging station for a car or whatever, I'm recommending them. And I think they're very appreciative of the fact that they acted in a wonderful manner and they're getting, rewarded with real work and real revenue from that action.
It was clear from his answers that Brooks felt that Westlake Residential was a well-run association. However, as many of our viewers know, there's a big difference between being well-run and being well-funded. So we asked Brooks to speak on the financial state of the association.
Yes, I believe this condo association is very well-funded. We closely follow the reserve study. The original reserve study we had was from Corporation A, and we found that it was rather conservative and we were overspending both maintenance and from the reserves, reserve capable repairs or reserve applicable repairs. We got another reserve study completed recently. It's a little more aggressive to the degree where we had to increase the HOAs to make sure that it was a 30-year study to make sure that we were fully funded through all years. We had some projected expenses that were coming up on us within the next 5 years. We raised, between the insurance and the additional reserve study fund requirement, we raised the HOA fees by 17% this year. That raised eyebrows, but when we were able to articulate the exact need for that, people were very satisfied. Well, I won't say satisfied or thrilled, but very understanding about the increase.
Given the association's insistence on adhering to their newer reserve study and the fact that most residents were understanding about a 15% dues increase, we wondered if they'd tried to pass a special assessment in the past. Here's what Brooks told us.
Yes, they did, and it was successful. So before I moved here, there was a special assessment to enclose a staircase that was open to the elements. Then that work was successfully done, and it was $3,000 to $5,000 per apartment. Since then, and working with the property management company and having discussion with the board and owners about the reserve study, we have been given guidance that banks and other institutions frown upon special assessments. That is an indication that your reserve study is not either funded or accurate. So we've had discussions from other, unit owners that, hey, can't we just wait for special, assessments and drop our HOA fees? So if we want to sell the unit, it isn't, the HOA is not prohibitively high. And we're pretty passionate with, no, special assessments are a bad thing when somebody's trying to get a loan to purchase a place.
Finally, we wanted to close this episode out, as we usually do, by asking Brooks if he had any advice that he'd like to share with other board members tuning into the program.
So let me preface this by saying 99% of the owners are wonderful people. Just a pleasure to be around, very thoughtful, very caring. And as I said, we spend a lot of our personal time with each other. So my advice to other board members is, remember that this is your home and not a business. I can see, business leaders and professionals coming in and me wanting it to be run with a certain expectation on, I expect all the contracts to be reviewed and the best and RFQ, the lowest cost RFQ, that vendor being brought on every year. And what that attitude causes is not only a constant churn for board members on educating new vendors and trying to bring them up to speed. And as I spoke before, it doesn't seem to be very collaborative with the vendors. This is my home. I'm more interested in the relationships I have, the work that is done with the vendors and the community members than I am with being tenacious on other, I want to say, business or financial related aspects of the board and the community we live in.
We want to publicly acknowledge Brooks for performing a thankless job well, and compliment the entire board of directors at Westlake Residential for taking their responsibility seriously to act in the best interests of their association. We hope you gain some HOA insights from Brooks's story, and that it helps you bring common sense to your common area. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to another great episode next week. And remember, if you match our definition of a board hero or know someone else who does, please reach out to us. Our contact details are provided in the show notes.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, common sense for common areas. You can listen to the show on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or subscribe on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel. Check the show notes for helpful links. If you like the show and want to support the work we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing that you can do is engage in the conversation. Leave a question in the comment section on our YouTube videos. You can also email your questions or voice memos to podcast@reservestudy.com or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members that you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that support this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast do not constitute legal advice. You'll want to consult your own legal counsel before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.